Queen Elizabeth II has passed away at 96 years old at Balmoral Castle after doctors became concerned about her health. Her family is traveling to Scotland to be by her side, but the health of the monarch has been a concern for a while, and as such, Britain has long prepared for this. The palace's secret plan for what happens in the days after the Queen's death is codenamed London Bridge, and it became not so secret after it was leaked to various media outlets. The documents contain granular detail for what happens over the next 10 days leading up to the Queen's funeral. The documents show the extraordinary level of action required by all arms of the British state, including a vast security operation to manage unprecedented crowds and travel chaos that could see, in the words of one official memo, London becoming full for the first time ever. They reveal plans for the Prime Minister and his cabinet to meet the Queen's coffin at St. Pancras Station, and for the new King Charles to embark on a tour of the UK in the days before the funeral. In the hours after the Queen's passing, a call cascade will take place informing the Prime Minister, the Cabinet Secretary, which is Britain's highest ranking civil servant, and a number of the most senior ministers and officials. The PM will be informed by the Queen's private secretary, who will also tell the Privy Council office, which coordinates government work on behalf of the monarch. The royal household will then issue an official notification delivering the news to the public. Ministers and senior civil servants will also receive an email from the Cabinet Secretary, a draft of which reads, "Dear colleagues, it is with sadness that I write to inform you of the death of Her Majesty the Queen." This email will also prompt flags across Whitehall to be lowered to half-mast, with them aiming to do this within 10 minutes. The UK Parliament and the devolved legislators in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland will adjourn, and if Parliament is not sitting, it will be recalled. A lot of the immediate plans after the Queen's passing relate to social media. The royal family's website changed to a black holding page with a short statement confirming the Queen's death. The UK government website, gov.uk, will display a black banner at the top. All government departmental social media pages will also show a black banner and change their profile pictures to their department's crest. Non-urgent content will not be published, and retweets are completely banned unless cleared by the central government head of communications. The Prime Minister will be the first member of the government to make a statement, with all other members of the government being instructed not to comment until after the Prime Minister has spoken. Then, the Ministry of Defense will arrange for gun salutes to take place at all saluting stations. The plan even details that at 10 a.m. on the day after the Queen's death, the Accession Council meets at St. James Palace to proclaim King Charles the new sovereign. Hundreds of Privy Councillors, including the Prime Minister and senior ministers, will be asked to attend. The proclamation will then be read at St. James's Palace and the Royal Exchange in the City of London, confirming that Charles will be the new king. At 3:30 p.m., the Prime Minister and the Cabinet will hold an audience with the new king, and at 6 p.m., King Charles will deliver a broadcast to the nation. Simultaneously, there will be a service of remembrance at St. Paul's Cathedral in London. The Prime Minister and a small number of senior ministers will go to that. On the second day following her passing, the Queen's coffin will return to Buckingham Palace. On day 4, a rehearsal will take place for Operation Lion, which is the procession of the coffin from Buckingham Palace to the Palace of Westminster, which will take place on the 5th day. The plan covers literally all business and preparation for the next 5 days, culminating with the Queen's funeral, which is expected to be held on the day 10. The state funeral itself will be held at Westminster Abbey. There will be a 2-minute silence across the nation at midday, and processions will take place in London and Windsor. There will be a committal service in St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, and the Queen will be buried in the castle's King George IV Memorial Chapel. The Queen has been planning for her succession for some time. The 73-year-old Charles, who has spent the longest time as king-in-waiting in British history, has been increasingly stepping in for the Queen. He delivered the ceremonial state opening of Parliament in May, the opening of the Commonwealth Games in August, and the COP26 climate conference last fall. Earlier this year, on the 70th anniversary of her ascension to the British throne, the Queen said that she wanted Camilla to be known as Queen Consort when Charles does become king. Now, if you guys want to check out the London Bridge plan for yourself, it is widely available to the public, and it goes into very fine detail about each day following the event of Queen Elizabeth II's passing.
Harry and Meghan have been left furious after learning that their 2 children, Archie III and Lilibet I, will not be receiving HRH titles when they are appointed Prince and Princess by King Charles III. HRH stands for His or Her Royal Highness. It is a style used to address or refer to some of the members of the royal family, usually princes or princesses. Monarchs and their consorts are often referred to as Majesty. The children are said set to be officially made Prince and Princess in the near future, as Charles has agreed to issue a letters patent to grant the titles. Harry and Meghan are worried about the security issue, and being Prince and Princess comes with the right to have certain levels of royal security. The children are able to be Prince and Princess, but will not take the HRH title because they are not working royals. They made sure to point out that Prince Andrew's daughters have HRH status despite not being working royals. Letting the kids be Prince and Princess but not having the HRH titles would be a classic compromise. Royal expert Phil Dampier said that though their children are still high up in the line of succession, they will not be working royals, so it's quite right that they do not have the titles. Lots of people think that Harry and Meghan themselves should lose their titles, and Dampier thinks maybe they should just accept the compromise and be grateful, as it could be a lot worse for them and their children. When asked if it was important for Meghan that Archie be called a prince, she said she doesn't have any attachment to the grandeur of the official titles.
Why skeptics believe the Queen isn't in her coffin. On Wednesday, the Queen's coffin was transported from Buckingham Palace to the Palace of Westminster, where she lay in state for several days so that the public could say goodbye and pay respects. But the population of the internet, including conspiracy theorists and just casual people, are speculating the royal casket is actually empty. On UK website Mumsnet, one user posted, quote, "I keep hearing people suggesting the Queen isn't in the coffin, as apparently the same happened with the Queen's grandfather. Sounds like a load of rubbish to me." Some people also believe that it would just be a massive security risk, especially with the very publicly shown transport of the body. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But it has also been planned for a very long time. Others also believe it would just be easier to preserve her for the actual day of the funeral, but her coffin was designed specifically for that purpose. So what do you think? What happens if King Charles and Camilla get divorced? The day before her Platinum Jubilee, Queen Elizabeth II announced that Camilla will be known as Queen Consort when Charles becomes king. This indicates that she is the spouse of a king instead of getting the title of queen, because members who marry into the royal family cannot inherit the throne. But what if they get divorced? Back in the day, getting a divorce was basically killing your social life, but society has changed. It would still be a huge deal, as something like this hasn't happened since Henry VIII, which makes it hard to say what would actually happen. She is now no longer Princess of Wales or Duchess of Cornwall, since those titles have been given to Kate Middleton. It's likely that she would receive some kind of title, likely staying a part of the family in some form, and some kind of private financial settlement, but other than that, we don't really know what would happen.
Why do you think Prince Harry and Andrew didn't wear military uniforms to the Queen's funeral? Queen Elizabeth's funeral had many members of the royal family wearing military uniforms. In fact, most of the Queen's children did. King Charles, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and even her grandson Prince William. But everyone noticed that Prince Harry and the disgraced Prince Andrew simply wore dark suits instead. So why is that? Well, Buckingham Palace has a reason for everything, and this is because only working members of the royal family who hold military rank are allowed to wear military uniforms to events, even the Queen's funeral. It sounds harsh, but if you lose the title, you lose the uniform. The world was shocked when Prince Harry lost his 3 honorary military titles after he and Meghan stepped back from their senior royal roles in March of 2020. It's easy to forget that Harry actually served in the British Army for a decade and was deployed to Afghanistan twice, because not only is military service permitted for members of the royal family, it's actually expected of the highest ranking men, which is a tradition that dates back centuries and continues to this day. Throughout their lives, the younger generation of the royals have tried to find their place in the world we live in now, while trying to abide by the rigid traditions of the monarchy. But it's pretty clear that the two brothers, William and Harry, both have a completely different approach to this. While William leads a life of traditional duty, charity work, and military pageantry, Harry broke all the rules and moved to California with his American ex-actress wife. And now the couple seem to be more interested in making podcasts than Buckingham Palace. Harry has also been quite comfortable publicly criticizing his family, and he seems to have a lot of beef with his dad, King Charles, in particular. Not too long ago, he went on Dax Shepard's Armchair Expert podcast and claimed that his father handed down a cycle of genetic pain and suffering to him, which is why he left. quote, "He treated me the way he was treated. So how can I change that for my own kids? We as parents should be doing the most we can to try and say, you know what, this happened to me, I'm going to make sure that it doesn't happen to you." He then went on to describe his life as a royal as a mixture between the Truman Show and being in a zoo. As for Prince Andrew, where do you even start? He earned his military uniform by spending 22 years in the Royal Navy, even serving as a helicopter pilot in the Falklands War in 1982. But he was stripped of all his military titles and royal patronages in January this year, after he was accused of SA by Virginia Roberts, who was also a victim of Jeffrey Epstein. But it's surprising that Andrew only lost his titles a few months ago, considering that he's been linked to the deceased financier since 2011, when sinister details of their friendship first emerged. Even his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson, who came forward confirming their relationship, revealed that the prince had asked Epstein to clear some of her debts. But Buckingham Palace came under immense pressure to cut ties with him in 2019, after his infamous Newsnight interview, which felt like watching a car crash. The reporter brought up Virginia's allegations against him from the night of the incident, which included very specific details about how Andrew could not stop profusely sweating while they were together. But the prince tried to poke holes in her story and said, "I didn't sweat at the time because I had suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War, and it was almost impossible for me to sweat." And yes, he really said that. Since then, the royal family have tried to distance themselves from Andrew and keep him away from public life as much as possible. Although he seems to have gotten off the hook legally, his reputation is completely tarnished to a point that it will never recover. So the fact that he was even allowed to join in the procession was mind-blowing. What is going to happen to the Queen's corgis now that she's gone? The decision is a bit of a surprising one. Queen Elizabeth II will be remembered for many things, and being an avid animal lover is definitely one of them. At the time of her death at age 96 on September the 8th, she owned 4 dogs, 2 Pembroke Welsh corgis named Muick and Sandy, 1 older corgi named Candy, and a Cocker Spaniel named Lizzie. But what's going to happen with them now? Well, it turns out that her beloved dogs will live with the person who gifted them to her, Prince Andrew and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York. A source close to the royal family told NBC News, the Queen's corgis will go to live with Prince Andrew and the Duchess of York at their home in Windsor, Royal Lodge. It was Sarah, the Duchess of York, who found the puppies, which were gifted to the Queen by Prince Andrew. Sarah still lives with Andrew despite being divorced from him since 1996, and shares with him daughters Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. The Duchess reportedly bonded with the Queen over dog walking and riding horses, and even after her divorce, they would continue their friendship by walking the dogs in Frogmore House. For most of her life, Queen Elizabeth has owned at least 1 corgi, a dog breed now as synonymous with royalty as Buckingham Palace. Living inside the palace, the dogs had a very privileged life, and had their own room in the palace known as the Corgi Room. They actually slept in wicker baskets with sheets that were changed daily, and the dogs were tended to by the Queen herself. Not only that, but their daily menu was very lavish and included fresh rabbit and beef, of course all served by a gourmet chef. In fact, at Christmas time, the Queen gave her dogs stockings full of toys and biscuits. But despite the Queen's wishes that no new dogs be added to their home from 2012 onwards, 2 corgis were welcomed back into the royal household in 2021, while her husband Prince Philip was hospitalized. It was then that she was given the 2 puppies, which she named Fergus and Muick. Both names actually hold a special meaning. Muick was named after a favorite spot near the Queen's summer retreat at Balmoral Castle, and Fergus was named after an uncle that she knew. He was her mother's brother, Fergus Bowles Leon, who was killed in World War I in 1915. But sadly, Fergus, the puppy, tragically died just 2 months later of a heart defect. It was then that the Queen was given another puppy in June by her son Andrew and granddaughters Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, on what would have been Prince Philip's 100th birthday. At her death, the Queen left behind 3 dogs. As a young princess, Elizabeth developed a deep love for her favorite dog breed in 1933, when she was just 7 years old. Her father bought a corgi named Dookie for Elizabeth and her younger sister Margaret. Not long after, the girls were gifted a second corgi by the name of Jane, who then gave birth to a litter of puppies. Then for her 18th birthday in 1944, Princess Elizabeth was given her very own corgi named Susan, which was also a gift from her father the king. So that's when her obsession really took off. In fact, since taking the throne in 1952, the Queen has owned over 30 corgis. Buckingham Palace was always extremely tight-lipped about anything to do with the Queen's dogs, because they're seen as a private matter. but it's clear that the Queen's love of the breed caught the world's attention. In fact, there was actually a clear spike in corgi registrations in 1936 and another one in 1944, the same year that Princess Elizabeth got Susan. She made corgis seem cool and popular, while they made her look warm and more approachable. As well as being the Queen's much-loved pets, the dogs are said to be a connection to her father and remind her of a much more carefree time. In fact, it's pretty well known that the corgis went wherever the Queen went from palace to palace. This includes on helicopters, trains, and in limousines. Walking them every day was a part of her routine, before mobility issues which really affected her in recent months. But it seems like the Queen's decision was a good one, as her beloved corgis will move in with Prince Andrew, and they will surely be cared for and appreciated in their new home.